My name is Maria Villella. Today I'm going to be teaching the second half of the primary series, which starts at Navasana and ends at Setu Bandhasana. So the second half of the primary series, just because it's called first series or primary series, does not by any means mean that it's a beginner's practice. It's very much so an advanced practice. And the second half of the primary series has some really advanced poses. For instance, where we actually go into taking the legs behind the head. There's some arm balancing, and then just some poses that require some really open hamstrings and a good amount of strength as well. So if you haven't really gotten to a place where you're very solid in the first half of the primary series, you really should stick with that until you develop the opening in the hips, the opening in the hamstring, and a certain amount of strength as well. Because you don't want to go beyond where you're at right now. That work is all very foundational and very fundamental, and what you're developing there is going to be the key aspects that are going to take you into the poses of the second half of the primary series. So ashtanga very much so builds up on the previous poses. So in a more traditional setting, you wouldn't be able to go into the next pose until you've completed the previous pose. So it builds on the previous poses. That's your foundation. So that being said, if you're going to try out this second half, you really need to be mindful of where you're at today. And you want to make sure that you're practicing and honoring yourself and not hurting yourself. There's some poses where, for instance, you roll up onto the top of your head in Setu Bandhasana, and you can set yourself up for injuries, and I don't want to scare you by any means, but I also don't want you to go beyond where you should be going right now, and to err on the side of caution, especially if you don't have a qualified teacher present in front of you to be teaching you and instructing you through the poses. This is an instructional DVD, but I'm not there present where I can watch and be sure that you're doing it in a way that's benefiting your body. So it's up to you to really turn on the inner teacher and make sure that you're honoring that inner teacher inside of you. And if you feel sharp pain or any discomfort that feels like it's not a good, healthy stretch, then you want to back off and consult with somebody before you continue to go down that path. Okay, from down dog, we'll jump through to Navasana. So you can jump right into the pose with the toes eye level, legs straight, or you can just jump through to seated and then bend the knees. Now, one of the key things to remember for Navasana is not to let your back round and to dump into the low back and the chest to sink. Instead, we want to lift the low back, open the chest up. And then the knees squeeze together, and you'll take the shins parallel to the floor. You can start off with the hands behind the knees and hold here for the entire time. Once your hip flexors has strengthened enough, then you can take the arms out. And then from there, the next stage would be to straighten the legs completely and hold for 5 breaths. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we cross the ankles, set the hands in front of the hips. You can start with the feet on the floor, lift the hips up, or lift the feet as well, or take it into a pendulum pose. And then exhale, release, and then again, inhale, Navasana. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You cross the ankles. Each time you cross the ankles, switch, which ankle is on top. Set the hand in front of the hips. Inhale, lift everything up, if you can. Exhale, release, and inhale, Navasana. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Cross the ankles, set the hands, inhale, exhale down, inhale, Navasana. 1, 2, 3, 4,
and 5. Cross the ankles, set the hands, inhale, lift it up, exhale, release, inhale, Navasana. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Cross the ankles. This time you'll do a jump back, so set the hands down in front of the hips. Inhale, lift it up, and exhale to Chaturanga. Inhale, up dog, and exhale, down dog. From down dog, we're going to move into Bhujapidasana, where you'll jump your feet outside your hands. So as you're jumping, you really want to transfer the weight into the palms of the hands and really push the floor to lower down softly. Exhale. And jump your feet outside the hands. Now the modification, where we start off in preparation for this pose, is bending the knees significantly and working the hands behind the knees. So you lift the right heel up and press the hand behind the ankle so that you can get the shoulder behind the knee. Then you can release the heel down and set the fingertips back behind the heel. Then you'll do the other side. Lift the left heel, take the left hand behind the ankle and work the left shoulder behind the knee, and then set the left heel down and the left hand down. Now, once you've gotten to this point, you want to squeeze the elbows in, resist the shoulders out, and squeeze the knees in towards the shoulders. Translates to shoulder pressure pose, and the reason is because you really want to have the knees squeezing in and the shoulders resisting out. So this may be where you stay, or you can start to sit the hips back. Now, it's not uncommon here for, as you try to sit the hips back, to just fall back on your butt and lose the pose. But do your best to just keep working on bending the knees and sitting the hips back so that they come inside the elbows. So you may stay here, just working on that flexibility, or the next stage is to lean the weight back and lift the feet up off the floor, and then lift the feet and cross the ankles. So you can stay in this position for 5 counts. The next stage would be to lower down to your head. Now, if your ankles aren't fully crossed, in other words, if your feet are more like this, toes are just crossed, then as you fold down, you're not going to be able to get your feet through. So really tightening it up and getting the ankles to cross will be really helpful, so that you cross the ankles, point the toes, lift the hips up, and use your fingers to let you slowly lower down to the top of your head. And then you'll hold here for 5 breaths, lifting your heels up and rounding your back. It's 1, 2, keep elbows in, shoulders down, 3, 4, and 5. Now to transition, you kind of roll down towards your forehead a little bit, or the top of the hairline, and then use your fingers to lift you up. Undo the ankles, take the knees in, come back to Bakasana, and exhale to Chaturanga. Inhale to up dog, and exhale to down dog. So the other way of taking this pose is to jump right into Bhujapidasana. So from down dog, at the end of your exhale, you jump right to Bhujapidasana, knees outside the arms and ankles crossed. And then on your exhale, you lower to your chin or the top of your head. I'll demonstrate that one if you'd like to give it a try. exhale. Kurmasana. So from down dog, again we'll jump the feet outside the hands just as we did in Bhujapidasana. And as you jump, still practice landing softly so you really shift the weight into your hands as you're jumping. Okay. Once you're here, again, the same exact actions as Bhujapidasana. The knees have to squeeze into the shoulders, shoulders into the knees. So again, I like to take the hands behind the ankles to work the shoulders back behind the knees. And then right away, find the knees, squeeze them in, and then hands flat, shoulders resist out, so you're opening the chest forward, and then you lean back so that your feet lift off the floor. Elbows can go out to the side as you lower the hips down to the floor. That's the transition to come into Kurmasana. Then from there, you'll take the hands out to the side and lower the feet to the floor. So the first way I like to have people work on Kurmasana is to take hold of the outer edges of the feet and keep the knees quite bent. Instead of straightening the legs right away, I like to work with the knees bent quite a bit. Now the knees squeeze in and the shoulders out. And notice I'm not rounding here. What we want is to lengthen the front body and lift the chest forward. Feet stay nice and active, sternum lifting forward. Then from there, once your elbows have cleared your knees, so if you're in this position, you straighten the arms, you're just gonna be putting pressure onto the elbows. And it's gonna be too much of a temptation to start rounding here. Instead, work with your hands on the outer edges of your feet until you can work your knees onto the upper part of your arms. And ideally, your shoulders underneath your knees. Then you'll take the arms out to the side. Now, once the arms are out to the side, notice the feet are only mat distance apart. We don't want them to go much beyond mat distance. So the arms are out to the side, knees are still squeezing in, and shoulders are pressing back out against the knees. There's no space between the sides of my waist and the inner thighs. We want to keep that space tight. If there's space, you don't go any further, you stay here. If there's no space, then you can start to straighten the legs. And as the legs straighten, instead of reaching your chin to the floor and letting your back round, pull the shoulders down the back and reach your chest to the floor so that your chest reaches the floor first and then your chin. And you start to point and press through the roots of the toes. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And release. Now for Kurmasana, what changes between Supta Kurmasana and Kurmasana is that the legs go into a lateral rotation. So you can take the legs into a lateral rotation. You continue to work the shoulders deep inside the knees and down your back. Then you turn the right palm up and see if you can take the back of the hand onto your low back, and then the same with the left. If you can, you clasp your hands. If you can't, then have a strap close to you, and you'll take the strap and swing it over to the other side and hold on to the strap with both hands. It's important that you get the arms together, the hands together, before you start working on crossing the legs. So if you're just barely clasping your hands, then don't even worry about crossing the legs and taking the ankles behind the head. Just work on getting the hands tightly crossed. Otherwise, if you start to cross the legs, then chances are you're going to lose the hands. If you're working on the legs as well, then you can come up to seated, and you'll bend the left knee, take the knee out to the side and then behind the shoulders, just as we did on the floor. So you have the knee squeezing in and the shoulder pressing back out. Then you take the leg behind your head or neck. You can lean forward a little bit. Once you're here, important not to let yourself round. You want to resist that temptation and try to open up the chest and press the back of your head into your shin. So there's not a lot of pressure on your neck the way there would be if you're rounding. Instead, you're using the strength of your spine to hold everything upright. Then you can use your left hand for support out in front of you as you raise the right leg up, hold onto the ankle, and take the right ankle behind the left. And then square yourself off to the front. From here, you can either keep the toes interlocked or eventually go more towards a pointed foot. You'll use your hands to lower you down to your head slowly. Once your head's on the floor, you go for the bind. You can hold on to your hands or your wrist. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. To come out of it, release your hands and set them underneath your shoulders on the floor. Press your hands to lift yourself up. Then set your hands in front of your hips, lean forward into your hands, lift up, inhale, undo your legs, but keep them bent. So there is no Titibhasana in first series. That's a second series pose. From here, keeping the knees bent, you just lift the hips up and come back into Bakasana. Inhale and exhale, Chaturanga. Inhale to up dog and exhale to down dog. And from down dog, jump through to seated for Garbha Pindasana. So lotus isn't happening for everyone. So if you're in lotus, you'll take your legs into lotus. If not, the modification for Garbha Pindasana is to cross the ankles, and then you'll wrap the arms around the legs. And you would hold upright here for 5 breaths with your ankles crossed, feet off the floor, and holding on to either your hands or a wrist. A lot of times you may want to start off holding on to the knees, but don't stay there. Even if you're not taking lotus, start working on also clasping the hands. So we'll take 5 breaths here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. After your 5th breath, you're going to roll in a circle as many times as it takes you to get back to center. So as you're rolling, it's an exhale to roll down the right side of your spine and an inhale to kind of swivel and roll up the left. And you do it as many times as it takes you to go around. Exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale. Once you come back to center, you rock all the way up, set your hands down on the floor, press your hands, lift your hips up, and hold here for 5 breaths, or feet as well. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then you'd release, take a vinyasa on the exhale. Now, the full variation, you're going to take lotus, full lotus. So again, this requires a lot of openness in the hips. So if you don't have that, then you're going to stay with the variation for now and work some of the previous poses, and particularly opening up the hips. So really press through the roots of the toes, take the knee out so we're not sickling the foot. We want to keep the foot nice and active. Then take the knee out to the side and start to bring the heel in towards the navel. Then take the knee back to center so the outer edge of the foot moves towards the hip crease. And you can take that hand out. Then after the right leg, we're going to take the left leg on top. So press through the roots of the toes again, making sure that this foot stays nice and active. Let the knee go out to the side. Then take the heel in towards the navel and then the outer edge of the foot towards the hip crease. Now, from here, you want to really work the action of pressing the baby toe side of the foot towards the hips, outer hips, so that you're not sickling here as well. Also, think about bringing the knees towards each other. So squeezing the knees into center. That's going to tighten up and close up your lotus. And if your lotus is not very tight, then you want to spend some time here just getting into this shape, opening up the hips and really working on tightening up the lotus. Now from here, we're going to take the arms through. They have to get through these tight holes here. So one thing that can really be helpful is to use a water bottle and spray down your arms, and that will make them slippery so that they can get through. If you're really sweaty at this point in your practice, you may not need that. So lift the knees up off the floor, hold on to them. Another option is you can take the arms around here. If you just can't get the arms through, you can hold on to the hands around the knees. You can also hold on to the knees here. Of the two, I prefer holding on to the hands around the knees. And again, you still want to try and get the arms through first. And you would maintain that as you roll in a circle and go back. Now, to take the arms through, if you notice, if you reach the right knee down, then you have all this space here. So the left arm is really easy to get through. We're going to start off with the right arm, though, because that's the tighter space to get through. So you take your hand and dive it through between the shin and the thigh bone, and you can use your left hand on your knee to kind of help lift it up as you take the arm through. You want to get the arm through as far as you can. Ideally, the elbow will come through. And then you can reach the knee down, and when you do that, it creates this nice opening in the left between your ankle and your foot, and you just thread the left arm through. Slide the arms through as deep as you can so that the elbows are through ideally. So when you're ready to go in a circle, you either keep the palms facing forward or you drop your chin and you bring the head towards, your palms towards the top of your head. And it's an exhale to roll down the back, inhale to come up, and you just keep rolling around until you get back to center. So. Once you get back to center, you set your hands down on the floor, lean into your hands and lift your hips, lift your knees, and come up for 5 breaths. Kukutasana. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You release. Take the arms out, and then you take a vinyasa here. So you can either vinyasa by leaning forward onto your hands and lifting the knees up, or take the full vinyasa. Set the hands down, inhale, lift it up, and exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, up dog, and exhale, down dog. And we'll jump through to seated. For Baddha Konasana. So Baddha Konasana, the soles of the feet come together. And sometimes the knees will be a little higher, and that's okay. You're gonna lift up out of the low back and work. You can even use the elbows a little bit to just kind of press the knees and the thighs out. But don't do that so much so that it turns into this. We wanna still remember that what's important is to actually lift up out of the pelvis. So you're reaching through the inner knees out to the sides as you press the heels and the outer edges of the feet together. So initially, when the knees are higher, the toes, all the toes will probably be together. But as the knees start to drop down towards the floor, the big toes will start to come apart and the feet will open up. From there, you inhale, lift the chest up, and on the exhale, you can start to fold forward, leading again with the chest. So the first one, it's important to find that length through the front body as you fold forward. The next one is when we round the back. So some people who are really flexible, the hips will come right up off the floor. You want to keep some grounding energy in the hips.
Keep the hips grounded on the floor. You should feel your sitting bones down on the floor. And then you lift up out of that grounding. And on the exhale, it's a fold forward, leading with the chest. And you look straight forward. And you can bring your chin all the way to the floor. And breathe. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Inhale, come all the way up. As you exhale, round your back, and then you bring your head towards the soles of the feet. So this is the opposite. Pelvis tucks under, and your head reaches to your soles of your feet. So the point is to round. And hold for 5 breaths. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, come up. Exhale, release. And you'll cross the ankles, take a vinyasa. Inhale, lift up. Exhale. And from down dog, you'll jump through to seated. Upavishta Konasana. Take the legs out to about 120 degrees. Ideally, we keep the legs nice and straight. And if the hamstrings aren't open, you won't be able to do that. But that just means that you have more work to do in the first half of primary series. So what you may need to do, because there is a tendency for a lot of us for the pelvis to tuck under, you may want to sit with the hands behind you and lift your low back so that the pelvis comes upright. Now, if you're really flexible, then as you fold forward, your hips are going to come off the floor just like Baddha Konasana. So you don't want that to happen. You want to keep the sitting bones in contact with the ground. You reach forward for your shins, or ideally the outer edges of your feet. Keep the sitting bones down on the floor. Take an inhale and lift your chest up. Keep the legs nice and strong, toes pointing to the ceiling. And on an exhale, you lead with the chest as you fold. So as you fold, the chest, the sternum reaches the floor before the shoulders and the chin. We don't want to round as we come. We want to really extend the spine and fold. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then inhale to look up. Exhale. Now at this point you can pop up and come right into the next stage of it. So I still have not been able to do that. So instead I inhale, look up, exhale, and then it's just try to keep the hands together. Another way of approaching it is to inhale, look up, exhale, lift the arms, lean back, and then take the legs up towards the hands. And then point the toes, shoulders down the back, legs nice and strong, and 5 breaths here. It's 1, 2, 3, keep lifting up out of the low back, 4, and 5. Then you cross the ankles from there, set the hands in front of the hips, inhale, lift it up, and exhale back. Inhale, up dog, and exhale, down dog. Jump through to seated. Supta Konasana. Exhale, lie down on your back. From your back, you press your hands down on the floor and push down into your head just so you can give yourself a little bit of cushion underneath your neck by working the shoulders underneath you. And then sweep the feet up overhead, kind of like halasana, but then right away you open the legs up to 120 degrees. And then you reach your hands and hook your toes with middle and index finger.
And you hold here for 5 breaths. Now notice you want to keep lifting the sitting bones to the ceiling as opposed to letting the back round. Work that action. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. As you exhale, you can round the back and roll up. Inhale, catch yourself. Exhale, you either land on your calves, holding onto your toes. If you can kind of lift the heels as you land, and you exhale, fold and hold, then inhale, exhale, release. The other option is if when you try to do that, your heels just come crashing into the floor, then instead you just want to inhale, exhale, slowly lower the weight of the legs down, and then fold. And then inhale, look up, exhale, release, and you'll take a vinyasa from there. And from down dog, you'll jump through, exhale, and lie down on your back. Supta Padangusthasana. So here, what could be a limitation is the hamstring length. So if it is, then you'll work with the strap. And your left leg is going to stay active, foot flexed. The right leg is going to raise up. Now try to raise the leg up straight. And then you'll loop the strap around the roots of the toes. Hold on to the strap. With your outer right hip, it's going to want to lift. Your job is to reach the right hip down and work the right sitting bone towards your inner left thigh as the left thigh presses down to the floor. You can either keep your left foot flexed if you're having a really hard time straightening the left leg. If you have the left leg straight, then you start to press through the roots of the toes and start to point the left foot. From there, it's an exhale to bow. If you don't need the strap, then instead you'll hook your toes with your right middle and index finger, and on an exhale, bow towards your right leg. Shoulders are off the floor. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Inhale, bring your shoulders down, and exhale, open the leg out to the right as you look over the left shoulder. Now, if as you open up the leg to the right, the left hip goes with it, then you've lost some of the integrity of the pose. Don't go as far with the right leg, but keep the left hip down on the ground. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Inhale, bring the leg back to center. Exhale and bow. Inhale, shoulders down, and exhale, release. Take the right hand to your right thigh and either use the strap if you need to for the left side or just raise the left leg up, hook the toe. On an exhale, bow towards the leg. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Inhale, bring the shoulders down. As you exhale, open the left leg out to the side, keeping the right hip down on the floor. Look over the right shoulder. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, bring it back to center. Exhale, bow. Inhale, shoulders down. And exhale, release. Chakrasana is the transition from this point. So you want to make sure you have a good amount of space behind you. If not, you're going to come a little bit more forward on your mat. And then as you come into Chakrasana, you press the hands down. I like to press my head into the floor and again, protect my spine by bringing the shoulders underneath me Then I sweep the feet up overhead. Once they're up overhead, instead of putting them down on the floor like halasana, you keep them lifted and take your hands up by the ears, fingertips pointing to the shoulders. Then from there, you push into your hands, squeeze the elbows in, press the back of your head, and reach the feet to the back of the room. So it's not done with momentum, it's done with strength. And then inhale, up dog, and exhale, down dog. From down dog, you look forward and jump through. Ubaya Panangustasana. Exhale, lie down on your back. Hands alongside the body. Again, press the back of your head, tuck the shoulders under you as you reach the feet up overhead. This time the feet can touch the floor. Reach around and hook your toes with middle and index finger. Now, part of the challenge could be keeping the legs straight here, but you want to try and keep the legs straight the whole time as you're rocking up to seated. Exhale completely, round your back, and then roll up on an inhale. Press through the roots of the toes, pull the shoulders down the back, and tip the head up for 5 breaths. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Exhale, release, cross the ankles, set the hands, and take a vinyasa. Jump through to seated. And then lie down on your back. Urdhva Mukha Paschimottanasana. Again, press the head and get the shoulders underneath you as you sweep the feet up overhead. Once the feet are up overhead, this time you grab a hold of the outer edges of the feet close to the heels. Exhale, round the back. Again, here as well, we want to try to keep the legs straight. Round the back, roll up. And then start to press through the roots of the toes. It's an inhale here. And then an exhale to bow towards your legs. At some point, you may be able to wrap the hands around the feet. So hold onto your heels with your left hand. Take the back of the right hand to the soles of the feet. And then reach for your left hand or wrist. Then the inhale would come here and the exhale folding. And you can look up towards your toes. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Inhale, straighten the arms. Exhale, release, and take a vinyasa. Inhale, up dog. Exhale, down dog. Jump through to seated. And then lie down on your back. Setu Bandhasana. So in Setu Bandhasana, I actually teach this a little bit more like fish pose in the beginning. You want to bend your knees and bring the outer edges of your feet on your mat. Make sure it's on the mat and not on the hardwood floor because it can be slippery on the hardwood floor. Outer edges of the feet on the mat, knees out to the side. Then it starts off like fish pose where you press the elbows, lift the chest up, and lower down to your head. Then from there, you use the hands on the floor for support. And you may even want to just stay here and just work on opening up the chest and getting used to having weight on your head. If you feel comfortable here, the next stage is to use the hands for support as you lift the hips up and get used to supporting the weight of your body on your head. From there, you can try to raise one arm, maybe, and then maybe the other. And then lower the hips, press the elbows, and come out of it. The next way that we can approach this pose is by coming up with the support of our hands, but then taking the arms across the chest and then learning to roll down, which in rolling down off your head, it's actually teaching you and strengthening the muscles that you need to come up into the pose using your head. So you press the elbows, lift the chest up, come onto your head, use the hands for support, lift the hips up, roll up onto your head, and then try to take one arm across and then the other. And then you can practice rolling down. Press the elbows and come up out of the pose. And then the final way is to use, have the arms across the body the whole time. So you'd come up like fish, press the elbows, tip the head back, lower onto the top of your head. Then take the arms across the chest. On an inhale, press your feet and lift up. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you roll down, arms along the body, press the elbows, and come down. And then there's another chakrasana, so make sure there's enough space behind you. Press your hands, lift your feet up overhead, push down into the floor, and reach back. Inhale to up dog, and exhale to down dog. And as with any yoga pose, but particularly Setu Bandhasana, because there is that risk of the neck, you really want to make sure that you feel steady, grounded, you're breathing, and you feel comfortable going into the full version. And stick with the first couple variations before you go into that full version, and just make sure you really feel steady and stable there. You don't want to hurt your neck.